Hi, this is a little video to show you how to use the timeline feature within the map. So unlike the table, which when you load the map, this one starts already expanded, so you can see the table. The timeline is this other tab that's up at the top. So we can go ahead and even close the table if we want and open the timeline. You can also have them both open at the same time. It will just make your map smaller. But here you can see that we have this cumulative timeline. And then if you use the arrow over on the side, it's a little bit hard to see, but this arrow that's here, you then switch over into a snapshot timeline. And so the difference between the cumulative timeline and the snapshot timeline, well, I'll just play and you can see it in the difference of the bar. So here, this blue bar is continuing to build. So when the data is being displayed, you'll see entries that are from 2004 and 2006 and 2026 and 2028. And so you'll see that build in this cumulative way, as opposed to the snapshot timeline. You'll also see it with the blue bar is only showing one instance of the data at a time. So it's like, let me see just this little slice and sliver. And so we can go ahead and see some examples of that. So within the map layer widget that's on the left that lets you turn on and off the layers, what I've tried to do is that if a layer is controlled by the timeline, we put this little asterisk to say that it's affected by the timeline. Haven't yet figured out how to communicate which timeline it is affected by. So at the moment, if you see one that has an asterisk, you can try it with both the cumulative timeline and the snapshot timeline. Still trying to think of a way to make that more streamlined. So with this one, the spend data, which is showing projects that are contracted to connect to the grid over time. So this is something that builds over time. So we'll use the cumulative timeline for this. So as we play that forward, you can see that these projects have a time in which that's associated with their contract. So we have that tied to the timeline, and they only appear when the timeline has passed their date. So we can see that runs out to 2041. And if you don't pause it at the end, it will just run the other way and restart, and so now everything goes back. If you don't have to just use the play button as well, you can click here and you can just pull it along as well to get it to the point that you want it to. And if for whatever reason you don't actually want the spend data to be affected by the timeline anymore, you can use this little eye here and turn that off. It doesn't particularly show it because it's already there. So here you can see that we're not showing all of the projects, but if we turn that off, it then just entirely removes the timeline effect. As another example that's affected by the cumulative timeline, we can go look at the East Lothian. And so here we've put some of the elements of the East Lothian LHEs outside of this effect of the timeline. So the general potential heat network zones are here, but then we put the elements that have a timeline effect in this proposed timeline group. So you can see they all have asterisks to indicate that all of these layers are affected by the timeline. Now, the timelines have to be shared between layers. So the East Lothian layers, you can see here, nothing's happening from 2025 up until it takes passing that 2028, because that was the first date that's in the East Lothian data. So if you're playing around and trying to find where something's being affected by, you can also go ahead and add it to the table. So here, if we go to add to table, you can see one of these will be a year. Except this might have been a bad example to start with. Because clearly we've chosen not to show you the year for this data. Hopefully in the next one, this will show you a year to demonstrate the point. There we go. Okay. So here you can see that there is a time element to this, and it's clearly just being hidden in that other layer. Though you should know that layers that are affected by the timeline if you open them, here the table is also being filtered by the timeline. So in 2025, we're not showing anything. So if you wanted to figure out what year something starts, you might need to pull it all the way to the end and go look for what is the soonest year or most recent year in the time element here. So here I can see that the first data comes in 2027, so that's why nothing is showing when we're using the timeline from 2023 to 2027. But here I'll just let this play out so that you can see the expansion of the East Lothian heat network in time. So you can see that's affecting both the heat supply sources, the demand, and the actual potential heat, the potential network of the pipes, though this is very obviously just indicative. And again, if you let that run past the time, it will go and reset at the beginning. So that's the cumulative timeline, but I also want to show you one that's using the snapshot timeline. So here, if we go down to demographics and social, we have the jobs and skills. And again, you can see this workforce projection also has an asterisk to indicate that it's using the timeline. But again, not a clear way to communicate that it's actually using the snapshot timeline. So again, I'm coming over to the snapshot timeline, just using these little arrows at the top. And this is one where it also helps to know the data, because this one doesn't, this is projection, so it's all out into the future, but we have another data set that's looking at the past, and again, they're having to use the same timeline. So here, our projections don't start until, let's see, is it 20, okay, it's 2025. Again, if I didn't know, I could have used the table as well, and pull the timeline all the way to the end, add to the table, and here I could see that, well, actually, because this one is a snapshot timeline, it's only showing me the year 2044, which is it's also interpreting as an integer here, and so we're getting that 1,000 number. So I'm only seeing it in 2024, and then if I pull it back, then I'm also only seeing it in 2042. But this would at least tell you that we're not seeing any of the data for one of these earlier years. But I suppose it doesn't help you to actually know when it starts. So for this one, if you didn't know, you'd have to just let it play forward. Again, I happen to know that it does start in 2025, so I'm going to just put it at 2025 and let that play. So this one is showing the local authorities getting darker as you have an increase in this annual number of jobs from domestic retrofitting. And here we're not wanting to see the cumulative number of jobs, we're wanting to see what's the annual increase in number of jobs that year. So that's why it's a snapshot timeline as opposed to the cumulative timeline. And the timelines are for the most part all set up under the main map. So you have the same structure under the lenses, you'll still have a timeline here. But if it's not working here for whatever reason, it could be that it just got disconnected in the process of being moved over into a lens. And so it will always work under the main map, and it might only sometimes work under the lenses. So I think that's everything you need to know about the timeline.